South Africa is edging closer to Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's third attempt in just 2 months to pass the national budget for the 2025-2026 financial year. The minister faces mounting pressure to close the 75 billion rand budget shortfall, heightening both expectations and concerns. For more on this, we are now joined by the Democratic Alliance's finance spokesperson, Dr Mark Burke. Dr Burke, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. A third attempt at tabling a budget speech for this year. What's the expectation from the Democratic Alliance?
Yes, it's almost like we're looking at budget 1.3, perhaps instead of budget 3.0, in that we were initially expecting infrastructure investment to take the focus and energy of this government over the next couple of years. We are now encouraged from the conversations that we've had that there will be a focus on infrastructure investment. And then, of course, we cannot fund any expenditure with an increase in value-added tax. So we expect this budget not to have any form of value-added tax or any other form of tax increases for that matter, such as an increase directly in income tax or corporate tax. And then we also need to make sure that we protect frontline services. So when we focus on infrastructure investment and when we focus on spending efficiency, that does not mean that we should be cutting back on doctors, nurses, teachers, and policemen. And so we would be excited to see a budget that focuses on infrastructure and that veers away from tax increases. And we're hopeful that come later this week, that will indeed be the case.
Yeah. Speak to us about how this particular process leading up to, as you call it, the budget 1.3 is different to the previous other consultation or negotiations that were taking place.
Well, the fact is we have to go back in time a bit and look at what we all agreed with the midterm budget statement last year. And that indicated that we can't have any more bailouts and we can't have tax increases. And then somewhere along the line between that agreement last year and the minister tabling his first attempt at the budget, VAT increases had slipped into the conversation and into the thinking. That has now been eliminated. So in the conversations that I've been a part of, that's not on the table. And it seems that all parties in alignment, and as I understand it, there was a productive cabinet meeting last week, although I don't know the intricate details of what happened there. The consensus within cabinet at the moment seems to be that there can't be tax increases in this budget, especially VAT increases. And so the fact is it is a fundamentally different budget from the perspective that we are focusing on the right things and we're not trying to extract revenue in the wrong places. And that seemed to be a more consultative and inclusive approach, and the way of thinking, it seems, has been altered in a positive direction. So I hope that's answered the question, how this is somewhat different from before.
Sure. So does this mean that there has been commitment that has been made by the finance minister that there won't be any tax increases? And I also base this on the first attempt at trying to table the budget, because with that attempt as well, as you just said, that there was no discussion about the VAT, and the next thing just before the budget was supposed to be presented came in a VAT proposal. Is there a commitment from the minister at least that that won't happen this time around?
Well, it'd be very surprising at this point if, again, a tax increase somehow slips in. I think the minister has publicly indicated that he's realized he does not have political support and therefore he has retreated from the indication that he wanted any form of VAT increase, be that 2% or 1% split over 2 years. I don't know what else to tell you except to say that we'd be very surprised by that reality. And of course, then we would oppose it. But I don't suspect that will be the case later this week.
Yeah, and from the Democratic Alliance's side, with the alternative budgets that you had proposed before, to what extent would that also then plug that 75 billion rand hole?
Yeah, again, I don't want to belabor finer details, but sometimes we do struggle with narrative challenges. So the 75 billion rand hole is an indication of what revenue at the current levels of expenditure might be needed over 3 years. The reality is a 0.5% VAT increase this year would have yielded somewhere between 13 to 15 billion rand. And so the problem we need to solve in the next year, if we didn't touch any spending, and it's not the DA's position that we shouldn't be leaving spending alone, It wouldn't be to the quantum that you've now mentioned, being 75 billion. But there's a larger question there, which is what are we doing differently? How are we approaching it this time? And we would hope to see a spending review kick off as soon as possible. And for the savings from that spending review, which is to look at what's being done across departments that could be done by one department, and what level of overlap is there, and what level of sprawling bureaucracy has crept in. And we need to eliminate those things, add the savings back in, and those savings should be reflected in adjustment budget later in the year. And we are hopeful that the Minister will give us more details on both how that spending review will be set up, who will be leading it, and how we'll make sure that the findings from that spending review doesn't become another recommendation in the South African context, where many things like the Zondo Commission's findings become recommendations. So if we can get that right, we'll have more efficient spending over the next year while we're part of this government. And when we have more efficient spending, then we'll be able to, focus on not just keeping taxes where they are, but over time, even consider reducing taxes.
Yeah. There was also an issue that was raised around the adjustment of the various brackets for income tax especially. Was that matter raised at all during the negotiations?
I can't speak directly to the negotiations. I was, to a limited extent, involved, and the last time I spoke to the Minister was a week and a half ago. I am not able to elaborate on exactly what measures will be implemented here, except I will be able to tell you I'll be very surprised if there are tax increases, be that VAT, personal income, or corporate tax. If there are things such as bracket creep, then I think in the context of what's just happened and the DA trying to be a constructive, collaborative partner, we will consider those things in good faith, but that's for the